Hello, listeners. Welcome to the Strength and Recovery podcast. I'm your host, Jay Rodenbush, sitting down today with Rahi Patel and Marguerite Warner. They are our alumni program for Raritan Bay. I found a list of just common questions about addiction, and I think this would be kind of fun to bounce off of you.
Okay.
Why can't drug addicts quit on their own?
The first person that said this to me, they were like my God until I found God, because self can't see self. It's impossible.
That's good.
It is impossible. And until another person who has experienced exactly what you were going through can look at you and be objective with you, they have the courage to be objective and not concerned with your feelings, but more your life, and they present it that way. It just blows your mind because you can't see it. I truly believed I was the least selfish person you'd ever want to meet, that if I had the opportunity to be friends with me, I would want to be. I just thought, you know what I mean? I really, truly did. And, when I finally started going through the process and this shift started happening, I was like, oh my God. My ego will deceive me morning, noon, and night.
Yeah.
Before my eyes are fully open, my ego is trying to deceive me. I can't see that. I believe it is fact.
Yeah.
Right? I believe what my ego says is fact. I need you to approach me.
Yeah.
And help me to see that. You can't.
What do you think?
There's exactly what Marguerite said. There's power in unity. Being a part of something is literally what it takes to be able to see different, because you can't during that stage of active drug addiction or alcoholism. And if we could have done it by ourselves, we would have.
Yes, we would have, because help's a hard word.
I think too, so much about addiction is about isolation. And it does make you isolate.
It becomes your one true love, your best friend, your biggest passion, your worst enemy. It becomes everything you need
and so
don't need.
The opposite of that, they will say often, is connection.
Yeah.
And getting people connected.
Imagine going through that process where you've totally cut yourself off emotionally, maybe not physically, you might have to present in front of people, but emotionally you've cut yourself off from the entire planet. And for the first time you sit down and you're talking with another human being, and as they're speaking, they are saying exactly how you feel, exactly how you think. They're sharing your fears, and you truly believed this entire time that you were the only person on the planet that felt that way. That's what begins to break you out of that isolation, because you finally have somebody else alongside of you that feels exactly the way you do. And I could sit down next to Rahi and he knows what I'm thinking and feeling without me even speaking. It's mind-blowing. That's what people in recovery.
I've been with you in a situation where you knew someone was drinking immediately. Someone who was in recovery who had relapsed, but you could pick up on that, and you said, it's easy for me to pick up on that.
Yeah. We just know it. I mean, yeah. But the beauty in that is coming from a person who genuinely cares about you and your well-being. It's not like a parent, a sibling, a spouse, It's another person in recovery who knows how you feel. We've been there. We know how hard this is.
Talk to parents, okay? So the question would be, how do you explain this to the non-alcoholic, the non-addict, specifically your family?
That's the toughest part, to try to break down, the disease of alcoholism or addiction to a parent or someone who's unknowing. Thankfully we do have resources where they do a good job at breaking it down. My parents didn't have the slightest idea, being immigrants. They had not the slightest idea, but with the use of Nar-Anon and Al-Anon, they kind of got it all together. Okay, wow. Addiction, alcoholism is a thing. But to break it down to someone, it's tough, but we do have a lot more resources than in the past. So it's heartbreaking for someone or a family to know what it actually is, but it's understandable, you know.
I think I would take that down to, how do you talk to a child? So we're all at different stages. We're all at different, how do you have those conversations?
Yeah, I think one of the most heartbreaking experiences I had in early recovery is when, of course, I had therapy as well. I went to therapy for quite a while. We also had my son in therapy, and there are times when you get to do those sessions together. And when he point blank said to me, "You chose alcohol over me," that was probably one of the most crushing moments, because immediately I wanted to say to him, "No, I didn't," and I had to stop myself. I had to stop myself, and I had to honor him, and I had to acknowledge him. Because, stone cold sober, choosing to pick the first one up, but, that is a conscious decision. But moving forward after that, it's no longer my choice. It dictates what I do, how I do it, and when I do it. But how do you tell, 10, 11, 12-year-old child that you are my parent, you are responsible to show up and be in my life and not do these things, and to look at him and, acknowledge that, and I had to say, yes, I did.
I think another relationship, I guess we're kind of going the span, how do you talk to a potential partner, a girlfriend, you're a single guy, how do you bring recovery into your dating life?
So with that, it's clear boundaries, setting clear boundaries,
Do you have certain things that you do for your recovery, going to meetings, sponsoring others maybe?
I lay that all out on the table, what's funny is a past relationship, this girl wanted to go wine tasting. I'm like, I got no business doing that. She goes, what do you mean? I'm like, I'm allergic to alcohol. Like, I have no problem setting those boundaries, especially to someone who's not knowing or not in the program, where they eventually do respect it. They might not get it, but they'll respect it.
When do you say that in the process? Like,
I'm up front.
Yeah.
Right away.
Right away?
Yeah, I'd rather tell you right away before there's any feelings developed, because if it's somebody isn't comfortable with it, they need the opportunity to honor their feelings, right? Yeah.
I think it's good. Any other thoughts on that?
Don't jump to date in the rooms. That's kind of from my own experience, Don't jump to get yourself in a relationship. Sorry, just to have that companionship.
Yeah.
Like, once I truly learned to be happy with myself, that's when I was able to find that, partnership with someone else.
And they make the suggestion, don't date in the first year, right?
I believe it. Live by it.
How important is that?
Very, very. I had to experience it myself to realize the chaos that comes from dating too early in recovery.
This one of these questions is, how can I tell if someone is struggling with addiction?
I think for us it's different than for those that aren't afflicted with, or not really afflicted, but for those that aren't addicts or alcoholics, for us it's really pretty easy. We know, your behaviors change. You start to isolate. With alcohol, you tend to be able to smell it. With certain types of drugs, you can tell it in, pupil dilation, or, what I mean? For us, we can see things that maybe the average person can't.
What would you say? I mean, to a parent, you were able to go under the radar for quite some time. People didn't know. What would you say to parents of teenagers? What would you be looking for if you had a teenager at this point? And what would you...
Who their friends are and who they hang out with. If the parent takes a little more interest in finding out where they're going and where they're at, then that kind of opens it up, especially if they're not sure, if anything, if there is a problem to begin with.
How do you help someone struggling with addiction?
That's like a tough one. In any way possible, you know.
Oh, I like that.
In any way possible. But as long as they're willing to receive help, and even if they aren't, we're still here to show them that there is a way out.
How does someone have that conversation? You think your husband, you think your spouse, you think your son, daughter is struggling. They haven't admitted it yet. How do you have that conversation?
It's very difficult. I won't say that it isn't, but I would say do it in a loving, respectful way. Do it in a kind way with compassion, and just for me, what works for me is if you just come out with it. Don't dance around it. Don't make a 5-minute question an hour long conversation. Just like bring it to me. And I don't mean being direct, but be clear, be honest. This is the person that you married and you plan on spending the rest of your life with. If you can't sit down with that person, and just say, hey, I'm really having a hard time. Make it about you, not necessarily them, because for me, as soon as you start pointing a finger at me, if I'm active in my addiction, the defense is going to go up, the walls are going to go up. I'm probably going to push the chair in and walk out and go do what I do. But like if you come to me in an understanding to the best of your ability, even if you're faking it, compassionate, loving way, and say, look, I'm really struggling. I love you, and this is what I'm observing, and I'm here for you, and I want to help. How can we do this thing together? I will be more willing. I mean, you're going to bring my walls down, and I'm going to be more willing to, want to accept your help. Mm-hmm. But if you're coming at me, loaded for bear, is that what they say? Yeah, I'm out the door.
Any thoughts for you on that?
I gotta agree with that. If you come with the more supportive approach, like a softer way, but obviously, be straightforward with it, then it's possible. But I was reliving like a moment in my head, like a similar experience where the cat was out of the bag, but it wasn't.
Can you share it with us?
Yeah, definitely.
Details?
Definitely.
I'm like, I need details. I gotta, since we're not being vague and we're gonna come right at it.
First IOP, before any inpatient or detoxes, that was the first type of programming I did. And, that was my parents' first, realization into the problem where they were getting that resources from the therapist, and meanwhile I'm pushing it off. I'm like, look, I'm passing all the drug tests, obviously borrowing urine, but so you know what I mean, it's all case by case dependent, but that's where I was at. I was throwing the chair, brushing it off.
So much work.
Yeah, it does.
I listen to these stories and I'm like, oh my word, these poor people just need time to rest. And they're so creative, brilliant minds to be able to.
Resourceful people.
Very resourceful. I think that's understatement of the year. Resourceful. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the cat's out of the bag.
Yeah, but so obviously still hiding it, and not willing to admit that there is a problem, because that's also the tricky part too. Like, not realizing it's a problem case to case basis. Like for a teenager or someone who's just going into it, they might not see the consequences as to it, and it's too early on.
Yeah.
And they don't see it's a problem yet because it hasn't been a problem in their life. Seeing experience from someone else or like a case study isn't enough until they start dealing with the issues. It's tough.
What resources do you recommend for families to start to educate themselves, or a partner, or where do you point them?
I'm honestly, I really liked our family programming. I really did. I heard a lot about it. It wasn't until I was asked to speak for a little 20-minute piece, and I logged on early and I stayed a little later, and I actually listened to the material and the presenter and the way they were breaking things down, and truthfully for me it was helpful. I mean, the obvious ones to say are Al-Anon and Nar-Anon, but RCA as a whole, we offer a mother support program now where they're educating, they're supporting, they're offering information and resources. But I believe it was Seeds to Recovery and the family program presentations. They were really helpful for me. I suggest them to people.
Yeah.
I
mean, and there's so much out there now with the internet.
Yeah.
But finding those support groups, finding like-minded people who are learning together. Mm-hmm. I think, again, addiction isolates. I think there's so much stigma around it for a mom to say, my kid is struggling.
Yeah.
They're no longer, it's one thing to post my kids on the dean's list. It's another thing to post my kids in rehab. We don't do that.
But we isolate in a crowd of people too. Like, isolation isn't just in a room by yourself. And I would imagine the parents and the significant others of children, suffering with addiction, that they're out there socializing with their friends at dinner and maybe even themselves
and
having a glass of wine. And they're dying inside and they can't talk to anybody about that.
I think there's some things too, like, you hear someone's kid had cancer. Mm-hmm. And you're going to be
empathy,
stopping off. You're dropping off casseroles. And we hear, their son has addiction, and all of a sudden, nobody knows what to say or do.
Exactly. That's the thing. Nobody knows what to say. It's not ill intent.
No, it's not ill intent.
They just don't know what to say or how to. And
so all of a sudden, even people who were your supporters.
Yeah.
Often don't know what to do. Mm-hmm. And so you've got to find new groups.
Yeah. Just like us.
You've got to get out there.
It's a family disease. They suffer with an illness as well because we, all those years of living in fear and, terrified that, we're not going to come home at night, we're not going to wake up in the middle of the night, all those things, they need their support network. They need their growth. There are 12-step programs for the family, where they go through the whole process as well, so that they can detach themselves from the disease and just be the child's parent.
Getting families on their own recovery journey. Yeah. Like, this isn't just...
It's not.
Your kid or your spouse's recovery. It's your recovery, too.
They've been held hostage. Yeah, absolutely.
Finding good therapists that can support the family, but... But the internet's your friend. In this case, maybe ask some other people, but get some recommendations. But finding webinars, finding support groups, educating yourself, and kind of, in many of these circumstances, your power, your control is completely gone, and so taking back some of that through education can be really impactful.
Yeah.
What other questions do you have for each other?
I don't really have
something fun.
What's your favorite color?
Blue.
Why?
Because it looks nice.
That's such a guy answer. Sorry, Rahi. No details. Just because it looks nice. Oh. Okay, now, Marguerite, I guess you have to answer the question.
What's my favorite color?
Yeah.
It depends on the day.
Yeah.
Nice.
True, really. Like, one day it'll be blue, and
Yesterday,
it's because I put it on and my eyes pop. I'm a little vain when it comes to color. And other days it would be those crazy peach shoes.
I was going to say, yesterday it was peach. I can tell you that. Yeah. Marguerite had new shoes, and we all knew it.
Yes. Yeah. Whew.
Yeah. They're super cute.
They arrived in the room before I did. Yeah.
No,
color makes me happy. Yeah.
Your face lit up. You were excited.
That's what happens to me when I'm in a store and I see a color. It just does something inside of me, and it makes me happy. So, sometimes like the shoes might be, looked upon by someone else as, boy, they're gaudy, but I don't care. I have to buy them and I have to wear them. Yeah.
What about replacing one addiction for another?
Oh, I've done it.
And how does that relate to shopping?
Whew, I've done it. I've done it with relationships. I've done it with spending money. I've definitely done it with shopping. And the while, you know how you know when you're doing it is like you're getting this rush when you're buying it. And I don't mean like that joy, like that, like, oh, the, you know, like the tickles of the peach shoes, but like you get this rush and you can't get enough in your cart and you can't get enough in your Amazon cart. And then it's there, and it's like, oh yeah, this is cute. I haven't even worn it once yet, and I could care less if I return it or not. There's a whole different feel to it.
Have you experienced that?
Yeah, when you put it on, you're still not feeling that rush and the joy of buying it. It's gone. It's gone the second you get it. Yeah.
2 years ago, 100% shopping, the worst, by far the worst, and I'm more, you know, I could see it now because I walk into my bedroom and there's like 100 boxes of shoes, and some of them are
both like shoes.
I get disgusted looking at it now. Like I could have saved all that money instead of just swiping away on Nike app on the iPhone. You know what I mean? Like I it sickens me now, and I wish I could go back in time and not buy some of them.
How did you get out of that? Did you just recognize it? Did you make it part of your practices? So how do you incorporate that?
Well, that's what with he and I, like the work that we do, we're, you know, the 12-step practice is a heightened awareness of self. That's what I'm seeking. You know, that's my goal. I need this heightened awareness of self, how it shows up, how my disease shows up. Once you have that heightened awareness, you might fall prey to it once or twice. But by the time you're getting ready to do the third swipe, you're like, no, wait a minute, I need to think this thing through. What are you doing? I mean, like I could go on an app and buy a $500 belt. Right? By the time that belt arrives, you know what I'm saying? You know, but what ends up happening is like when I'm surfing, I actually start to feel that awareness of like, what are you doing? What void are you trying to fill right now? What's going on?
That's an important question.
There's this thing we call pause. Legit, I wear my pause button around my neck. We have this thing called pause, right? We need to pause. We're either agitated, doubtful, we're seeking, we're needing, there's something.
Okay, slow down. Pause a minute because I want to get that.
Yeah, you need to pause and just step back. And
so Marguerite is wearing a very simple, beautiful gold chain with a little charm on it that's got the 2 lines.
Yeah, it's my pause. Sometimes I just grab it and hold on to it just for no reason.
Because you need to consider the decision?
Sometimes I need it just to pause most of the time I need it to pause with my thinking.
Okay.
Not necessarily a decision in that moment, but, you know, throughout the day, I'm forever, you know, I fidget.
Thoughts can come through. I love this saying. I've heard it for a lot before. It's not mine, but like a bird can land on your head. You can't do anything if a bird lands on your head, right? But you can keep it from building a nest.
Yeah.
And so that pause goes, wait a minute, is this thought?
But we become conditioned to do that with everything. So like there's set things to be aware of, right? But until you do the work to have a heightened awareness, you're not even aware it's going on. I legit let my subconscious run my life for 40 years and didn't know my subconscious was running my life because I wasn't aware of it. I truly believed that the thoughts that I was having that generated the feelings that I was having, which caused the behaviors that I was displaying, were fact.
So
and they weren't.
Thoughts lead to feelings.
And then the feeling would lead to the action. And I really legit thought that was it. That was the real deal.
And so that pause makes you go, and do you question, do you go back to the thought? Do you go back to the feeling? Or to the behavior?
Do you know what I do when I pause? I ask God to remove it, to direct my thinking, show me how to be helpful to another human being because I'm caught up in myself again. And it's human instinct to be caught up in ourselves. You know what I mean? I am a recovered woman. And being recovered, right, I no longer suffer the symptoms of the illness, right? That's the definition of being recovered. So the symptoms of my illness are to be so self-focused that I can't see you. And even while you're talking to me about something really significant in your life and I'm staring you right in the eyeball, I'm not hearing a word you're saying. I need to pause and I need to reposition myself and hear you, right? And hear what's going on in my head. And I know today that I didn't have the power in the past to do anything about that. I lived as if that was who I was, right? Today I know that that's false. False evidence appearing real, right? There's the fear thing. But I know that that evidence is false. And I have the opportunity right there in that moment to pause and say, wow, I'm feeling agitated. I'm feeling fearful. I'm feeling...
And so when you're examining those feelings...
Takes a matter of a second now.
And what do you do?
In that moment, I pause and I ask God to remove it and to direct my thinking.
But if you're saying, I'm feeling fearful...
Yeah, I'm feeling fearful. I'm afraid.
Do you ask yourself why?
That's my inventory process. A part of my 10-step process, 10 and 11-step process, which I'm going to keep taking it back to the steps because it showed me how to live.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to live.
Yeah.
I was ill-equipped with that, that ability. But what I do in that moment when I pause, and immediately I ask, I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling resentful. Please remove this. Please direct my thinking to your will, not my will, because apparently I'm involved in self again. That tug of war has begun, and direct me and immediately look for someone that I can help. But a part of that process too is I need to make a phone call or I need to go sit in an office of somebody else that's in 12-step recovery and say, hey, can I do a quick 10-step with you and talk to them about, and they're listening.
Slow down, Marguerite.
Okay, yeah.
Tell us.
You want to talk about the steps?
No, I want to.
I get amped up.
That's the difference.
I think it's the Celsius during Marguerite's today.
It might be, but when I get super passionate about 12-step recovery and I become a completely different human being.
So you go into someone's office and you say, I want to do a 10-step. What's that like?
What's that like is, if Rahi is somebody that I give spiritual consent to, which means that I know he works a solid program of recovery, I respect that he is going to be open and be able to receive what I'm saying and give me constructive feedback and not try to be my employee or my friend or my coworker, or he's going to give me constructive feedback and he's going to say what I'm hearing is, and I need you to say to me what I'm hearing is you didn't get your way.
So you're going to say, I have a resentment?
No, I'm going to say,
or I have...
Sometimes what it sounds like is, I am so pissed off. Do you know what happened in my group today?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's going to have the ability to sit and just let me get it out. He's pausing now. And then he's going to say, can I offer this for your consideration?
Okay.
It's never like, this is what you are doing, but can you consider this, And then just say, this is what I'm hearing. And as he's saying what I'm hearing, that stuff melts out of my body. I can physically feel it leaving because he's spot on. I was afraid of someone's opinion of me. I was afraid my ego, was getting in the way. My pride, all these things were coming up that I couldn't see in that moment. He's going to help me to see them and identify them.
And that's what the fellowship offers, right? That's what
I would say more. The fellowship, yes, does offer, but that's what a sponsor and that's what somebody that has a solid, profound experience with the 12 steps of recovery, because not everybody in your fellowship, honestly, not everybody in the program has worked the steps, has had that experience, and that's okay. If they're staying sober that way, more power to them. But for me, this is life or death, and I have to do that.
How do you examine emotions as they come up, feelings as they come up?
I can't say it any better than Marguerite, but it's like character development for me. I want to be a better version of myself the next day and be able to adequately handle similar situations and scenarios in a more positive way. So, I've heard her break this down 10 times better than me, but the character development and change really happened when I started actively working the step 11 every night, doing that daily reprieve and seeing, who I harmed. Do I owe anyone an apology? And how I was in a certain situation and I could have been different. And so when I started doing that and then going over that with my sponsor once a week of difference, that's when that character development, became a whole lot better, that I no longer acted with, anger or frustration, and able to deal with situations as they come instead of just acting on impulse, because I used to do that a whole lot. And you see that, I'm big on character development, and you'll see my time as opposed to Marguerite's time, where you can see how she breaks everything down. So it's great. And how she said, there's been times where I've had to run something by her to get that advice. on how to handle a situation or how to go about it,
Yeah.
as opposed to, you know, jumping on my own and knowing I could have dug myself a nice hole.
Yeah.
And then having to go back and clean it up. I don't like cleanup.
Oh, this has been so good. Thank you both for your time. This episode was a little different today, just to answering some questions and talking, listening to us just have a fun conversation, and needed conversation. So thank you for tuning in. If you or someone you know needs help, please reach out. 1-833-RCA-ALUM. Contact one of our coordinators. They really can be your recovery resource and link you to the support that you need to get help for our friends and family, or just to learn more about recovery. Thank you for listening to the Strength and Recovery podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please tap the subscribe button and leave us a review. We love hearing from our listeners and hope to reach more of you out there as we continue to share these incredible stories of recovery. The RCA alumni team aims to provide a safe, supportive environment for those in the recovery community, regardless of their affiliation with RCA. We host a full calendar of virtual and in-person meetings 7 days a week, 365 days a year, as well as free sober events every month. To learn more about what we do, find us at rcaalumni.com. Remember, if you or a loved one is struggling with addiction, pick up the phone and dial 1-833-RCA-ALUM. Help is available 24/7. Listen to another episode now, or join us next time for the Strength and Recovery podcast.